Hey everyone, the one and only is back yet again. I've been super busy getting in this work done for you guys, as I have been enjoying helping you guys out with all your questions, especially my viewers who are going back to college and are having a tough time deciding on which MacBook to pick up, especially with that awesome promotion they're having where they're giving away free beats to students who pick up a MacBook up until September 25th or 26th, I think. Don't quote me on the date. So now is the perfect time to be informed, and now may be the time to upgrade. Some of you all may inevitably still have questions on which to pick up, which is totally okay. If after this video you're still undecisive, make sure to follow me on social media. I'll put up my @handles on the screen right now, and shoot me a DM with your unique use case and questions so I can make a better recommendation tailored specifically to you. Also, if you're new to the channel, scroll down just a bit and you'll see this big old button that says subscribe in red. Click that, as in a couple of months for the iPhone launch, I'll be hosting my biggest giveaway yet for the new Series 5 Apple Watch, so make sure to ring that bell so you don't miss a thing. Apple only recently shook up the entire mix of their MacBook lineup and upgraded the entry-level MacBook Pro 13-inch quite dramatically, giving it a very impressive processor upgrade and coming in really close to the price of an entry-level Air. So the question many may ask still lingers: which is the right one for me? The MacBook Air or the entry MacBook Pro 13-inch? I will try my best to answer that question and more, so sit tight, buckle up, and grab some snacks because we're going to go in depth and really dissect everything there is to know about the new entry-level 13-inch MacBook Pro. Let's go! Okay, we're going to do a really quick unboxing because we've unboxed the higher spec 13-inch Pro before, and the unboxing is literally the exact same thing. We have our beautiful 13-inch Pro here in space gray in profile with the Apple logos and MacBook Pro branding on the side, as well as serial number information and the exact specs on the back, so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. I couldn't find a knife, but I found this 2-meter stick here to help me out, and it did the trick just fine. You'll find once opening the box that your MacBook Pro is just in its wrapper, mocking you, waiting for you to get your grimy hands all over it. But as always, we're going to set that off to the side for now and look at the other contents of our box. We have our warranty and information guide, as well as the coveted Apple stickers, our 61-watt USB-C power travel adapter, and our USB-C to USB-C cable. Now, going back to the star of the show, we now just take off the plastic protecting our MacBook Pro, and you'll find that your MacBook Pro is cold to the touch with its unibody aluminum design, which is just gorgeous and makes for a very good looking machine. Pop open the hood, remove the protective film over the display, and your Mac will start up automatically. Now, taking a quick tour of the device, we have our polished Apple logo up top, which is super shiny with this mirror-like finish. 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on the left with a sole 3.5mm headphone jack on the right. On the bottom, we have our 4 rubber feet to help stabilize the computer while you type. Open up the MacBook and you see your huge and gorgeous glass trackpad on the bottom, which is the best in the industry in my opinion. I've never used a trackpad more responsive and reliable than this one. We have our 4th gen butterfly keyboard, which I'll brush up on later, and the 2 speakers flanking that to the left and right. Then we also have a first for the entry-level Pro, the TouchBar and Touch ID sensor. MacBook Pro branding underneath our display, which speaking of is still our gorgeous 13.3-inch Retina display with unchanged resolution or pixel density. And at the top, our laughable 720p video camera used to make FaceTime calls or Skype. So this update has been a long time coming, as the entry-level Pro is a beast of its own kind in its own category. The higher spec $1799 MacBook Pro is primarily used by professionals who want a good amount of power to their machine but don't want to lug around a heavier 15-inch Pro around everywhere. It's like the perfect compromise between power and portability. With the new entry-level Pro though, Apple really shook up the mix and made it even harder for the consumer to choose which to buy. This is a good thing though, trust me. Before, it was quite easy to decide between the Air or the entry-level Pro. The old Pro from 2017 sported a measly dual-core chip and wasn't all that pro, but finally after 2 years, we see some really nice changes. For one, the most obvious thing you'll notice right away is that this sports the touch bar. Before, the entry-level Pro actually had the function keys and was missing the touch bar, being reserved only for the higher spec 13-inch option. Now the touch bar comes standard across the entire Pro MacBook lineup, which I think is cool, especially since the price point remained the same. It would have sucked so bad if Apple forced this on us and raised the price. Now that would have been a bad apple. Now I can hear all you guys from here. I know most of you guys think it's a gimmick. I actually find it quite useful on iMessage. to reply to the dank memes people send me. Trust me, go into a Starbucks and scroll through the emojis on the touch bar and you'll earn respect guaranteed. You'll look like a complete boss. Outside from that, I have never used a touch bar for any practical purposes. You can use it on pro apps like Final Cut, but I find the trackpad is vastly superior and much more precise. So while I don't care much for the touch bar, hey, it's there and now we have no choice. One great thing accompanying the touch bar is Touch ID, which proves to be very useful. We didn't have this on the entry-level Pro before, but it makes unlocking your MacBook, avoiding entering your Apple ID password, and even making online purchases such a breeze. The hallmark feature of this new entry MacBook Pro is going to be the massive internal spec bump. As mentioned, this hadn't seen a refresh since 2017. Now at first you might be deceived by the low 1.4 GHz CPU and compare it to the previous base clock speed of 2.3 GHz on the i5 processor of the 2017 model, and may assume the lower base clock speed is dismal compared to its predecessor, but take a closer look and you'll see this new MacBook Pro sports a quad-core architecture versus the dual-core processor found in the previous model, making this machine a very attractive offering given its lower price. Some reports are showing that this model is up to an astonishing 83% faster than the previous model. Looking at some benchmarks, we have a Geekbench single-core score of 4,777 and a multi-core score of 17,503. This is a huge improvement over the previous model and makes for a more potent purchase over the air since you get much more power under the hood for just $200 more. This means that attaching this to an external monitor or running multiple Chrome tabs all at once will run silky smooth and with little issues. I tried opening up several tabs typically found in an office setting like Microsoft Word, my email account, Excel, Wikipedia, and even YouTube on Chrome and saw no problems at all whatsoever. The multi-core score sees a massive jump thanks to those extra cores, and you'll really be able to see the difference when you compare its performance to the likes of the entry-level Air. Where I did run into some issues, however, was exporting and rendering raw 4K footage on Final Cut. Export times were somewhat lengthy, but editing itself was pretty smooth with not too many dropped frames. For video editors, consider the higher spec $1799 13-inch Pro, or for the optimum performance, any 15-inch 2019 MacBook will see much higher efficiency while rendering and exporting. An eGPU like the one Blackmagic offers could make a great pairing with this, but why dish out the extra money for that and have to lug it around? My suggestion is just to get a 15-inch Pro with its dedicated graphics card if you foresee doing lots of heavy editing in the near future for the most reliable machine. But if you're just starting out and plan to do the most basic video editing, then this isn't too bad of an option. One of the major issues I have with this Pro computer is the pitiful 128GB SSD and only coming with 8GB of RAM. In 2019, a Pro laptop with a 128GB SSD and 8GB of RAM would be laughed at if it were any other company but Apple. It's quite ridiculous. My phone almost has 90GB used up, so you're trying to tell me if I back my phone up on my MacBook Pro 13-inch, then I'm basically done? That's it? Storage full? For a Pro device? Insane. The 8GB is okay, I guess. I would recommend upgrading to 16GB of RAM, but if you're on a budget and can only upgrade one and not the other, upgrade the SSD. Believe me, you'll thank me later. The 8GB of RAM is just enough for light video editing, but try working on a lengthier Final Cut timeline with lots of transitions and animations, and you'll see that perhaps you should have gone with more RAM or the bigger 15-inch Pro. I say this because you're stuck with what you buy, so be very careful when making your purchase so you're not stuck with an expensive machine you'll regret later on. While the addition of the Touch Bar and Touch ID is pretty neat, we do also get punished for picking up the entry-level model versus the higher spec $1799 version by having some stripped down hardware. We have only two Thunderbolt 3 ports that share a single Thunderbolt 3 bus, which is a huge shame on something again touted as a Pro device. This, similar to the Air, causes a dilemma while trying to charge a device. Let's say your desk is set up a certain way and now charging is a chore because you'll have to rotate your device because you'll have your power outlet on the wrong side. It is nitpicky, but having the choice of where to plug in to charge is something we take for granted. Most people should be fine with just those two, but there are countless of Thunderbolt accessories out that most Pro consumers own, like external GPUs, docks, chargers, SSDs, and other external 4K displays, just to name a few. A neat way to work around this issue is to buy a USB hub that grants you access to a wider array of ports, but that just means dropping more money on a device that should have sported more I/O in the first place. You just have the two Thunderbolt 3 ports and your lonely 3.5mm headphone jack on the right all by itself, reminiscent of the way you spend most of your Saturday nights. For my last point, you can't talk about modern MacBook Pros without discussing the keyboard. Yes, this still sports the butterfly keyboard, and some are livid that after 4 iterations of this keyboard, Apple refuses to change it. I'm sure Apple realizes the thousands of people who refuse to pick up a new MacBook solely because of the keyboard issue. While I don't mind it at all and actually like the low travel and feel of the keyboard, most people hate it, and it's not even so much about liking it, rather the reliability issues that come with it. Imagine being a journalist or editor working hard to get your work done, and all of a sudden, your dumb keyboard gets those sticky keys and now you have a useless keyboard. This is why people hate the butterfly keyboard, and I don't blame them. This sports the 4th gen keys with the new material, but it's way too early to tell whether this fixes the issues they have had before in the past. It is quieter than the 3rd gen keyboard at least. So despite the minor annoyances and limitations of this Pro machine, what do you think? I still think it's an excellent buy. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. It's leaps and bounds better than the old dual-core entry MacBook Pro by a long shot, and now we get the Touch Bar and Touch ID thrown in while still remaining the same $1299 price point. The ultimate question for this MacBook cycle will surely be entry MacBook Air or entry MacBook Pro. I would honestly say spend the extra $200 and go for the Pro. You get the Touch Bar, something the Air doesn't have, while also getting that quad-core processor that will make a fool out of the dual-core found in the Air despite the lower base frequency. The only compromises you'll have to make versus the Air is that it's slightly more expensive and a bit heavier than the Air. Definitely go for the Air if you plan to only use this for school or light web surfing and minimal editing. If you're soon graduating or are in any STEM courses where you'll need to code with applications like R or MATLAB, or if you're a photographer and use Lightroom or Adobe Photoshop, or even if you don't currently video edit on Final Cut but plan to in the future, just get the Pro. You'll be future-proofing yourself better than with the Air. Just know the limitations of the entry-level Pro. You get that quad-core 8th gen Intel Core i5 processor, which can turbo boost up to a supposed 3.9 GHz, although I highly doubt it'll ever reach those speeds. Intel Iris Plus Graphics 645, which is way weaker than the likes of the mighty Vega dedicated graphics cards found in the higher spec Pros, and a measly 128GB SSD with 8GB of RAM. This video was primarily about the base model, but please, for the love of God, don't stick with the 128GB of storage. That would be playing yourself. Not on a Pro device. No sir. At least get the 256GB if you can. All in all though, this is the MacBook to buy, and at last, Apple finally created a device that is reflective of and worth its price point in my opinion. It's a great entry-level computer into the pro consumer market if you're planning to just take baby steps into video editing, photography, coding, or music production. If you're wanting more power or more multitasking abilities though, definitely get the $1799 13-inch MacBook Pro that not only has better processors, but the 2 extra Thunderbolt 3 ports. But let me know what you guys think. If you had to choose between the entry-level Air and Pro, which would you choose and why? Comment down below if you can't decide, and I'll try my best to reply to you or help you out. That's it for me, guys. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.